Welcome to this Baja 4 collaborative worship service. We are the Baja 4 Unitarian Universalist congregations who come together in covenant to worship, learn, and transform our world. We represent Unitarian Universalists in Amado, in Sierra Vista, and all across Tucson. We have been gathering and worshiping and learning collaboratively for almost one whole year. And we do this because we believe that we are stronger together. And each time we gather for our worship, our service, our practice, we acknowledge that we are living on stolen land. This land is the ancestral and present home of the Chiricahua Apache and the Pasquayaqui, the O'odham, and Opata. We, alongside our indigenous neighbors, now have a shared responsibility to stay in right relationship with each other, with the land, and the animals. Unitarian Universalists have a practice, usually happens this time of year, a sacred practice that we sometimes move everything else on the church calendar to focus on for a period of time. Christians have Lent. Muslims have Ramadan. Jews have the high holy days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And we Unitarian Universalists have a stewardship drive. And there's an irony that we laser focus on these traditions when they come, because although these are times when we are raising money, in some congregations, maybe even yours, you would be hard-pressed to hear someone actually say the M word out loud during the entirety of the annual practice. We say gifts, treasure, bounty, abundance, contribution. We go to great lengths to avoid saying money, checks, cash, coins. No wonder we have some trouble raising money sometimes. No wonder we have so much anxiety about fundraising that sometimes we forget that we are donating money to continue our mission, not to stop the anxiety. And there is something deeper here, maybe a few things under our anxiety about money. More on that later, but for now, know that talking about money can be hard. And know that whether you have a negative balance or just enough dollars or many, many figures in your checking and savings accounts or saved under your mattress, you are welcome here, just as you are. Your monetary worth does not determine your spiritual worth. All of you is worthy of love and dignity. All of you and all of me. If you have a chalice or a candle or something else to light nearby, will you light it with me now as I offer these words of chalice lighting? These are my own words, interspersed with Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker's offering, Choose to Bless the World. Your gifts, your economic power, however many its digits, can be used to bless or curse the world. The power of checks, the strength of coins, the impact of dollars, any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? What is it you choose to do with your money, your pocket change, your savings, your stock, your inheritance, your economic power? No matter how small or big, I hope that you use it to choose to bless the world.
Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our hearts with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful, may we still thy goodness prove. Come, thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war fall silent, feel our love glow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come, thou fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us bind ourselves in union, help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above.
We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing, and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, and being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. We are one. These words are by Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson, and they are a call to presence. In a world of action, when we are not present with the choices we make and the actions we take, we risk reacting in ways that are not in line with our values. How do our values guide us to act about money? Even the word value is something we use in reference to money. What do our values ask us to do with money? I invite you to close your eyes and notice your breathing. Just thinking about money can be distressing for some of us. Take a moment to notice how you feel about this subject. I'm going to return to a portion of the same reading. This is a time to consider what our UU values teach us about how to have, spend, and share money in our communities and congregations. How to be present with the choices that we make. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can.
I invite you to become uncomfortable with me. As a matter of fact, this whole worship arc in the Baja 4 will consider taboos, subjects we want to set apart, so uncomfortable we never want to consider them. And I think it's important that we do look at them, because system theory teaches us we have a choice to make about anxiety. We don't choose whether or not we feel it, but we can choose how we respond to it. So we can take a troublesome topic and just push it off to the side, ignore it, but it will find its way back into our lives in unhelpful ways. Or we can face it down, go through discomfort, but become healthier as people and as communities. So today I'm looking at, why don't we talk about money in this country and in our churches, and how unhelpful that can be? I don't have all the answers, but I have a few interesting suggestions. The anthropologist Caitlin Zaloom says, a change happened in American culture around 150 years ago as we began working more and more in industry, and we got concrete wages for our hourly work that showed what we were worth to our bosses in our industry. She said we took into ourselves a core belief then that your value as human beings is somehow made material in your pay and in your accounts. Suddenly, we would not want to disclose our financial situation. It might indicate how worthy we were. And are other people more worthy if they earn more? This clashes deeply with our first principle of Unitarian Universalism, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. What a conflict between our beliefs here and the beliefs we've taken on in the world. There may also be reasons we don't discuss what we earn to keep a kind of false peace. The political scientist Jeffrey Winter says that when there are deep disparities in wealth, there's a lot of conflict. But if people don't talk about the difference, they can live together in peace. Taboos around money among haves and have-nots alike, he writes, exert a sort of stabilizing force, blurring how much people actually have and giving them one fewer reason to be unhappy with their place in society. He says that an American consulting company working in China discovered Chinese employees talked freely about their salaries, and so they had to shift the pay. They couldn't keep it as disparate as it was for American employees. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson points out, it's interesting that we have a language and a vocabulary for race in America, but we don't have much of a vocabulary for class. Are we more anxious to talk about that difference? And when we do have a vocabulary, Jelani Cobb says it can be dangerous. During the vice presidential debate of 2008, the expression working class was used twice by Sarah Palin, but never by Joe Biden, who talked about the people he grew up with, who worked in factories and steel mills, but he referred to them as middle class. And 90% of Americans see themselves that way. We don't discuss the huge differences in whether we're paid by the hour, whether we have salaries, whether we have health care, whether we have a living wage, whether we have transportation, whether in a pandemic we can stay at home or are forced to work in dangerous situations with the public. We gloss over all that. And she says that may have served forces in our society. For many years, particularly during the Cold War, when any reference to class carried a whiff of socialist sympathies, is part of that informing why we're so scared to speak of our differences? In this context of this country, of course, within our churches, we also find it difficult to speak about differences in our financial situations. But when we don't consider that we are different, when we don't understand where other people may be living, we start to exclude them, make them feel invisible, hurt them. The Reverend Erica Barron was very active in her home church when she was a college student. And one day, a stewardship guru came and explained that it was very important that leadership make a pledge to the church, and that it was important to ferret out who the core members of the church were. Those were the people who could make a donation of $1,000. She was horrified. She felt like a core member, but she was a student. She couldn't give $1,000. Did she not count? And how difficult to not know or not think or not understand that people might be very different. Some people might give more. We have a sense in our churches that we are very much the same. We want to be egalitarian. We want to value each other's worth. But when we don't talk about monetary difference and how that plays out in our lives, whether we can pay for lunch at church or not, whether boys who are piling their plates full may not have another meal or are just eating too much, when we encourage people to drive after dark who don't have cars, we make people feel invisible and unseen. And we're not stewarding the most important resource we have, each other. What if we looked at money as a gift, both something we could give away and something that we have inherited, sometimes without working for it? It's a tool. That's all it is. What if we turned and found ourselves more able to describe what's happening in our churches? Because money has less power. In the next section, I'll talk about ways to try to ferret out classism inside our churches and healthy ways we can embrace money as a gift.
ad Isten, al Isten ad zöceg nincsen. Where there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no need. Where there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no change.
Hi friends, I want to talk to our younger friends today. I don't know if you've noticed, but grown-ups have a really hard time talking about certain topics, and money is one of those topics. Today we're talking about money, so it might be making your grown-ups around you a little uncomfortable. Now, a lot of grown-ups believe that money is something that drives people apart. There's a saying that says, never do business with family, never get involved with people with money. They think that money somehow can ruin relationships. But I want to tell you a story about a group of people who believe just the opposite, that money and being financially integrated together in some ways can help make relationships stronger. So as you're listening to this story, I want you to think about a couple questions. This story's a little bit different, so think about a few questions. What do you think we would learn if we talked to each other about money more openly? Can we put our relationships at the center of our interactions around money, rather than worrying about our buildings or our belongings or the things that we have? Can we worry about what's between you and me first? And can we learn to build church communities that trust each other and are willing to have these hard conversations? So, kids, go talk to your adults about money. It'll make them really uncomfortable, and that's kind of fun to watch. Here's the story. The story is about a woman named Alicia Villanueva. She's from Mazatlan, Sinaloa in Mexico. She came to the U.S. a few years ago, about 10 years ago, looking to make a better life for herself and her 3 kids. She started out cleaning houses and taking care of people with disabilities, but all she ever really wanted to do was to start a business cooking, and she's really passionate about making tamales. So in order to do this, in order to finance this dream of hers, she joined a tanda. Now, a tanda system is sometimes called a lending circle. It's like a no-interest loan with your friends. So here's how it works. So let's say you have 10 friends, or family, or coworkers, people that you trust. Everybody agrees to give a set amount of money every month. The Tander's organizer will collect that money every time you meet. The group gets together. The group might have a big fiesta. Some groups get together and they have a beautiful fancy dinner together. Some groups get together and do an event together while they're exchanging their money. Every time the group meets, one person in the group gets to take home the whole pot. So if there are 10 people and everybody brings $100, they take home a whole lot of money that month. Now, they don't take it home every month, they just take it home once over the course of time. These kind of money circles or lending circles are in cultures across the world. In Brazil, they're called pandeiros. There's susus in West Africa and the Caribbean, and hoi in Asia. And it works this way, that if you take home the pot early on in the process, you've got a no-interest loan. If you take home the pot later in the process, you've been given an interest-free savings account because somebody's holding your money and you know that you're going to get that money back at the end. People use their money for things like expensive dental work or fixing a car. If somebody misses a payment The consequences are pretty severe. There's not a loan shark that's going to come after you, and it's not like The Sopranos, but there's some serious peer pressure because these are people that you know and you trust and you're going to see in other areas of your life. There's a risk somebody's going to run off, but there's a researcher named Carlos Villas Ibáñez. He's actually at Arizona State University, and he's done research on this that says that the number of times that people run off with the group's money is very small, very slim. So what did our friend Alicia do with her money? She joined several tandas over the course of her time in California. And each time she was able to take care of some basic needs and invest in her business. She got to the point where she was no longer caring for other people. She was strictly making tamales. She bought a food truck. She started hiring a staff. And in 2019, she landed the contract to sell tamales at the Warriors' new stadium in California. She caters for Google and for Facebook, and she's in talks with Whole Foods to get her tamales there. Was all of this because of a tanda? No. She had other projects and other opportunities along the way, but that money club, being able to talk openly with her friends and family about what she needed and being able to support each other to get what they needed, helped her to make her business successful in the end. So here's the question. As we think about our community, how would we be stronger together if we put our relationships, the connections that we have with other people, first? What if we put that over our embarrassment over money? What if we put that over our own personal needs to expand our finances? What if we let our values, what we think is important, us together, dictate our budgets rather than our budgets dictating our values? We step up for each other in so many ways. Why does money drive us apart? I think part of the challenge is there has to be this deep trust in one another. Alicia had it for the community she was involved in. How do we create that deep trust that we feel safe talking about things that are really kind of uncomfortable? We're exploring these and so many more questions and sensitive topics in this series. I think these discussions are a great way to begin. In the end, who we are together is more important than our finances. It's more important than our buildings. It's more important than anything. We are the church, and we are stronger together.
I want to give a shout out to Reverend Matthew, who has created beautiful slides for us almost every worship. And he has primarily picked lovely images from the Sonoran Desert. For this week, I asked for a pond, and Reverend Matthew delivered. I wanted a pond because I am much informed by the work of Presbyterian minister George Thompson, who says when you try to understand a congregation and its culture, you can use the image of a pond. Around the outside on the shore are the sticks and stones, the artifacts you can see easily. On the surface of the pond are lily pads, things we say about ourselves. But deep down in the muck are the core sayings we truly believe and are rarely theological. I served a church recently before I came to Sky Island that had some interesting artifacts on its walls. As you entered the sanctuary, you saw faded banners. And I found out when I walked through it with a former pastor that his wife had made those banners 30 years before, because when they arrived, they had found faded banners from 30 years before that. When a friend of mine made new hangings that were beautiful, the church refused to pay for the material. It stunned me. I couldn't figure it out. And as I got to know the church, I realized a core belief they had. They had survived as a mission church on the edge of Arizona in a small town by being frugal. And I think they had a core belief. We are frugal with things and trappings and decorations, but they were generous with people. when my husband lost his job, they found a way to pay me more. So they had this core belief about money. We're not going to waste it on anything to decorate, but we will spend it on humans. Very often, a way you can figure out a deep down belief in the muck of a congregation is to see the difference between what they say about themselves and how they act. So let's say we have the artifact of a church budget, and all around us on the walls we have a covenant and a mission statement and the 7 principles. Does this budget reflect what we say about ourselves? Where's our disconnect? Reverend Mark Harris wrote the book Elite, looking about classism in Unitarian Universalism, and he says you can look to the actions of building to see something about how class plays out in congregations. One way of looking at patterns of class structure among UUs is to see where and with what populations we intentionally tried to grow. We may say we're inclusive and we welcome all, but where do we put our energy? And he says often building campaigns had to balance our democratic, liberal beliefs and a great desire to build a church in a neighborhood and in an area that would attract people who could help the church grow. So we may say one thing and act differently. And what does that show about ourselves? I want you to notice your discomfort when you see things like that. Like when Reverend Erica saw that the guru said you need to give $1,000 to be a core member. That was jarring for her. Pay attention to your discomfort. That will show you possibly where other taboos are coming up, where classism is raising its head, where we still need to excavate and grow and learn more about ourselves, not running from who we truly are, but standing in our principles to address it. I also invite you to a kind of comfort, a very specific kind, to truly stand in what you believe, understand what matters to you, get your sense of worth from that. The motivational speaker, Rob Williams, says that in the West, when we use the word abundance, we mean it always as money. Now, there's nothing wrong with material abundance, and we need it, and it must come first. We have to have shelter, we have to have food, safe transportation. But he says sometimes we don't know where to stop, we just want more. He says with spiritual abundance, we can get clarity. And for him, spiritual abundance is knowing who we are, why we are here, what we are called to do. If you take time to excavate that inside yourself, to stand in that, it will inform how you use your resources. Today's worship began with a chalice reading from Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker called Choose to Bless the World. And some parts that we didn't hear earlier, I think apply here. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude, to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. If you stand in that, you truly know who you are, why you're here, what you're called to do. And then your self-worth doesn't come from your money. Your money is a tool, a resource to do what you know you're called to do. And she says more, the choice to bless the world will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, the chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, this is another possibility, waiting. If you know who you are and your true value, and you take your money and use it as a resource, however much or little you have to give, as you give it, we truly do become stronger together. And as in Jamili's story, as we give, we create community. This is just a tool in the process of doing what we are called to do and what our values implore us to be. So I hope that church can be a place where we can remember to be ourselves, to know that we are valued far beyond any money we own, and to remember to pay attention to disconnects, to jarring moments, to embrace taboos through which we can grow. If we look at those and are uncomfortable, maybe we can reclaim knowledge we have lost. And maybe we can claim, as we will work with Reverend Bethany next week, our power and our authority.
Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
We are bogged down by the details of life, the Reverend Richard F. Bouquet tells us. And we are bogged down by the details of life. We are smothered by detail. Our bodies, they fill up with knots of anxiety, and our throats are dry. And we would weep, but our eyes have no tears. We would cry out, but we have no passion. Who has done this to us? We confess the pain we cause ourselves. We confess the pain we cause others. May we accept our limitations. We cannot do everything. May we affirm our power. We can do something. May we open ourselves to a larger hope in the silence. In the silence. I extinguish this flame in the echo of Reverend Richard's words. In this silence, may we hold uncomfortable details and knotted places in our bodies. In this silence, may we also listen to our words before speaking. And may we witness our actions before taking them. In this silence, may we find together a larger hope, no matter the fake fights or taboos that we would engage. In this silence, may we find one another, and may we find hope.